Good afternoon. Welcome back to ACX University. Today is the fourth panel in our summer series for 2016. And what we've got today is Hey, I Know You, Creating and Maintaining Your Actor Brand. I am joined today by ACX producer, author, and narrator Gabra Zachman, Reed Armbruster, and Robin T. Fink from Audible. Gabra is an award-winning audiobook narrator, actress, and writer. She was trained in classical theater and has been seen all over the country's stages as well as off-Broadway. She has recorded over 300 audiobooks to date and has her own studio in Queens, New York. As a writer, Gabra is the author of the Bod Squad series, Pocketbooks 2015-2016, and does some entertainment blogging for xoxoafterdark.com. Gabra is passionate about entrepreneurship, social media, yoga, chocolate, letters, and real old-fashioned romance, not necessarily in that order. She is most passionate about creating a great and joyful life well lived, and I think that is a fantastic closing line to a bio. Welcome, Gabra.
Oh, my goodness, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Excellent. Up next, we have Reed Armbruster. Reed joined Audible in 2014 after 15 years of hard labor in traditional, digital, and social media at New York agencies both big and small. As Senior Director of Social Media and Digital Communications at Audible, he guides his team in creating and sharing social content that seeks to inspire, entertain, educate, and connect Audible listeners, as well as the larger listening community. Reed holds a BA in English from Princeton University and an MBA from the NYU Stern School of Business. Welcome, Reed.
Well, hello.
Got my cards confused here. Here we go. Robin T. Fink is a graphic designer, early adopter, voracious reader, internet nerd, chronic oversharer, and ampersand enthusiast. And you can't tell that's a great text joke because there's an ampersand in the ampersand enthusiast part. She's the creative manager for the Audible social engagement team and is therefore allowed to be on Facebook at work. Ooh la la. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, so thank everybody for joining us. Let's get right into it. I'd like to start with what social media channels is everybody on? Why do you like those channels? Why don't you like those channels that you're not on? Let's start with Gabra. What is your online social presence?
Sure. I am on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. I think really it's just those three. I do have a website as well. And I think early on, I really fell in love with Twitter. I got to know it from being an author because I think it's a great writer's platform. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with the kind of short wit of it, and how to be authentic and short wit, mm-hmm. Type of thing. Facebook, it took me a little bit longer to come round to. I initially wasn't such a fan, but I think I've really come around to that. I both have a page as an author and also just my own personal account. Mm-hmm. And Instagram, I feel like, is the thing that feels like to me is growing the most and has the most potential that I don't think I have quite harnessed yet, that I've just come around to in the last year or so.
And so when you say sort of I'm on, do you mean as an actor, as an author? You did mention a personal account. Do you have 3 accounts on each platform?
No, I really, I jokingly, but it's not a joke, call myself a multidisciplinary storyteller. Ooh, and so that means that in every platform, Gabra Zachman is Gabra Zachman, the actress, the author, the audiobook narrator. I know we're going to get into a little bit of this later, but juggling how and when I post on what is definitely something that I do all the time and that I need help with. Right. But no, there's no different things. I have a Bod Squad series page on Facebook that's separate, but actually I think that's the least successful of all of the other things. I sort of feel like the other things they all feed into each other and play upon each other.
Interesting. And as you said, we'll get into a little bit more of how all those interact as we go on.
Yeah.
Great. Reed, Robin, in terms of Audible's social media accounts, where is Audible? Where is Audible not? Why? Why not?
I'm going to let Robin take this one because she's vastly more informed than I am on this particular topic.
All right.
Yeah, so my role at Audible is really to manage a lot of the day-to-day doings on these accounts, which is why I think Reed tipped this question to me. So we're also on the big 3, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We sort of test and learn into other platforms. We, a few years ago, took on a Vine campaign and haven't touched the account since, so clearly that was not a good fit for us. We're also, Pinterest is huge, Snapchat, all the kids on Snapchat these days. But, we don't just automatically jump onto every platform that comes out. There's social media platforms like launching every day and failing the very next. So it helps to sort of like sit back and watch, see what audiences are on which platform, and then figure out what content and how you sound and how active you should be on each.
Yeah, just to springboard off of your answer, Robin, I think what's most important for us is determining why we're on a particular platform. Do we have something unique to bring to that platform? And so we can get into this in a couple minutes, but we have a unique or a distinct purpose for every one of our platforms, and so we set very clear expectations about what sort of content and what kind of conversation people can expect to see on each particular platform.
And when you say what can we bring to each platform, do you mean in the larger sense, what can Audible bring to any platform in general, or what can Audible bring to Instagram that we're not bringing to Facebook?
I think
is
that's
it both?
I
Maybe
think that's
it's
a really
both.
good question. I actually think it's both. Marketers always throw around the idea of value, that they want to bring value to their audience, and I think it's an overused term, because I really think you have to define what the value is to your audience, and that means knowing who your audience is and what they find to be valuable. Value can take multiple forms. It can be extra information. It can be behind-the-scenes access to a talented narrator, a talented author. It can be facts that just help illuminate the work that our customers are listening to. And that's a way that you can provide value or enhance the experience that they're having with your brand, and thus the experience they're having with your social platform. Longest answer ever. Apologies.
No, that's great, and I like it because it puts marketing and branding in a way that doesn't come off as sort of like creepy or sell or whatever. Of course, Audible loves its listeners. ACX, we love our rights holders and producers. But at the end of the day, it is a business, and so the question is, if Audible wants to get listeners or wants them to get audiobooks, what are we providing for them in return to bring them in and have them come live in our world? Yeah. Yes.
You want to,
Yes.
Is that just
Well,
a yes?
it might just be a yes.
Well, I was
Robin,
gonna say,
you want to field that one?
We have a new teammate, Jessica Fusco, who was formerly at another company, recently came in a meeting. She said, well, you go picture of a kitten, picture of a kitten, picture of a kitten, picture of a kitten, cat food.
Right.
Like you have to like give your followers something that they're going to enjoy before you say buy my thing.
Right. Yeah.
And and there is kind of, in the same way that there are sort of natural ebbs and flows to a conversation like the one that we're having right now, there is, to your point and to Jessica's point, I think, a natural ebb and flow to a conversation via social media. If you were to treat it like a dialogue, you can kind of sense when the right time is to move on to the next topic, maybe to push a little harder. I make a delineation between a hard sell and soft sell, and I think that's the kitten, cat food.
Right.
When you need to take someone to dinner first, right, and
Right,
out to a movie, hopefully,
Right.
before you sort of try to seal the deal. And I think it's the same with any conversation. It's the same as any marketing. They need a reason for them to be interested in you, in what you're saying, what your experience is, and this is all just part of it. I think we all know when the natural time is to enter into a more transactional conversation.
I think conversation is the key word here.
You stole the words right out of my... That's what I was going to pull out of his answer.
Yes.
Please, go on.
The whole thing about social media is that your followers feel they're talking directly to you, whether you're a person or you a brand. Conversations are two-way. So you're talking to them, but they can talk back to you, and then you can talk like conversation. It goes both ways.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very important part of the way social media works, whether it's social media for personal or social media for, again, brand or company or something like that. That leads us really well into my next question. When we're talking about this conversation, we're talking about cat food. How often are we each posting? Does it vary by channel? You can break it down by channel if you want, and take it all together too. How often are you posting? Now you and all of you have, different accounts and author, narrator. You run some accounts for theaters and a production company that we'll get into. So that's my long way of saying, so how often are you posting?
Right. What a wonderful question. Something I struggle with, which is, I'm already learning so much from the two of you, but something that I really struggle with is how to be organized about that. I feel like what I do, I certainly post on all three platforms every day.
Okay.
But how exactly? The way that I tend to organize myself is generally around campaigns for something specific or promotions for something specific. So let's say suddenly I'm reading narrating a fantastic book. I'll post across all social media about that thing. I don't think I vary as much according to the social media, how I vary the posts, and that's something I'm going to get a lot out of hearing the two of you talk. But I would say at least once a day there is a post going on, and my great focus is how I'm connecting the personal to the business of it, which means that there's a sell there, but as you say, there's also the engagement of it. There's the personality of it. There's how I am connecting with the larger audiences that are listening to those posts.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So at least once a day on each platform.
At least,
maybe
yeah.
More often than once a day on Twitter, I would assume, just because of the very fast, ephemeral nature.
I would say, probably a couple of times a day on all three platforms, depending again.
And I assume this is a more Robin type question?
Yeah. So we, over the past couple of years, we used to struggle to find something to talk about on Facebook every single day. Now we're trying to limit ourselves to no more than 2 or 3 posts a day because we've just, as our team has evolved and as our partnerships have evolved and the things that we're talking about in our community has grown, we sort of have the problem of too much good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches.
Yes,
That's a
exactly.
great problem to have,
Right.
but at the same time, you have to be strategic about it.
Right.
Yes, right. And then on Twitter, we're definitely posting probably between 10 and 20 tweets a day. That's not counting just sort of conversations that we're having, whether it's through our customer service handle, which actually is a separate account run by our wonderful, stellar, award-winning customer service team. But they are responding to people on Twitter a lot, many times a day. And then on Instagram, we are also posting at least once a day, sometimes, again, 2 or 3 times. I think part of the nature of it is that in social media, a lot of things are very time sensitive. It's sort of, there's a joke that if you miss the internet for a day, you've missed everything. But if you miss the internet for a week, you miss nothing. So if today is National Watermelon Day, so we found,
Of course it is.
Of course. So we found a great quote from Mark Twain that said, once you've tasted watermelon, you understand the food of the angels. Happy National Watermelon Day. Where if we put that out yesterday or tomorrow, it's not going to get the pickup because it's not National Watermelon Day anymore.
Right.
So it's sort of if you already have something great planned for that day and then you get an of-the-moment idea, you're like, oh man, I already have something planned. You have to be flexible because, again, you don't want to just vomit posts everywhere because then you'll dilute your message.
You don't want to steal the thunder from National Vodka Watermelon Day, which I look forward to.
That
every
sounds
year.
like it would lead to vomiting posts more than just the regular watermelon day.
It might. I think what Robin is pointing to, it should be made very clear that there's no mandate. I honestly believe, and I know Robin's with me on this one, that first of all, there's no formula, right?
There's no right way.
There's no right way to do it,
Right.
And second of all, I don't think you can go into any kind of social media engagement saying we're going to do X things a day and that's what we're going to do. Because the thing about social is if it's not timely, if it's not relevant, and it's not shareable, right? Shareable is a big thing. So when you're posting on social, ask yourself, would I share this? Would my friends share it? And if the answer is no, please don't do it. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're all consumers ourselves.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think you need to go into that with saying, when I have something important or interesting or entertaining to say, I'm going to post. I'm going to try to do this X times,
Right.
per day,
Right.
or X times per platform. But it's important that all your efforts are strategic,
Right.
and thoughtfully considered. Otherwise,
Right.
I don't think you're going to get the results that you want.
Right. Don't force it. And that goes back to the dialogue aspect. It goes back to, I have this, one of the things that I try to let guide me when I do social media, and I also do social media for ACX, as well as my own personal social media, is just, I try to take it back to if this were a conversation with a friend, or if this were out in the town square, in the real world, I try to let those guide me because I think it can be very easy, and maybe you find this too, that since online there's no, it's no emotion in the text, there's no intonation.
Tone is hard.
Yeah,
Tone is
exactly.
very hard.
So I just always try to take a step back and say, would I say this, in public? Would I say this in a party group conversation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
You'd be surprised how many people will tweet things on Twitter and like mention an author or a narrator or a celebrity or whatever and be like, oh man, the latest John Smith book totally sucked, and they'll tag John Smith in it, and John Smith will be like, I can hear you. You
He's
literally
a person
tagged
too.
me in this, and you're letting me know about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, social media. It's not, unless all of your settings are on private.
And
Then you're not. What you're saying is a public conversation.
And even then, I would make the point that even if all your settings are on private, I always assume everything I post is going to be seen by everybody all across the world.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
That's a good rule of thumb.
I mean, all it takes is one person screenshotting it or whatever.
And then you can never be president.
Or a platform changing. Yeah, well, hopefully. Yeah. Or a platform changing their privacy settings and you don't realize or whatever it is. That would be one of my big takeaways, is always assume everything is seen by everybody forever.
And this also leads into the point about which channels you're on. It's honestly better to do one channel really, really, really well. Just slay that dragon, instead of trying to put yourself in multiple places and be spread too thin.
Right.
Because the behavior on each platform is unique in very subtle and nuanced ways. And your audience on that channel knows when you're not really a native of that platform. So let's just put it this way: you'll be called out. If not openly, then in their minds they'll know. Okay,
Right.
you know, he or she doesn't really know what, let's say, Twitter is really about.
And that will transform into fewer impressions, fewer shares. It will help a post not succeed in one way or another.
Correct.
Yeah, and then it negatively affects your brand, which is the bottom line.
So
Is that a segue into brand?
Could be.
well, so you're painting me into a corner, but I was gonna. Gabber posed a question that I think would be valuable for the audience that I don't think we ended up answering. We said a lot of great things, but Gabber was curious: how do we manage the fact that we have all these different accounts and we have a bunch of different ones to post to? Can you just clarify? Did you mean in a very technical sense, like, do you keep a spreadsheet, or did you mean sort of how do you keep it all straight in terms of the thematically?
I actually think I mean both.
All right.
I've already gotten so much out of this, but I think the greatest thing I'm going to take away is what you've both said about the specificity of each separate. I tend to treat them all as kind of one thing.
I know, because it's really hard and time consuming.
It really is, and so
I
I
know,
use
and
I use Hootsuite, right? And so I'll like put something up there and then ferret it out to sometimes more because I do LinkedIn also because I do. So sometimes and I have other accounts as well. So sometimes it's going out to like 10 different accounts at the same time, which is like how wonderfully better for my time management. But now that I'm hearing you, I'm thinking, but actually least effective for what I'm trying to do.
So there are two schools of thought. One is being part of the conversation is a good thing regardless, right? Horrible sports metaphor, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So there's always that one. But I think in this particular case, there is the old reach versus resonance argument, which is, as a brand, as a business, as a personal brand, I think I would rather have 1,000 ravenous people who will share and talk about whatever I post than 10,000 people who aren't as engaged.
I love it. So this is the question that I posed that then you posed that now we're posing again, right? I posed, you posed,
Sure.
we all
All right.
posed.
We all post.
It's a re-repost.
It's a
Sure. Okay.
As we're reposing.
Yes.
There you go. Imposable.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. My question is, do you guys do you have a spreadsheet of how you?
Oh yes,
Robin
we have
can
a
take
spreadsheet.
that
To
one.
see the
She is the maestra, I guess you would say.
Maestra? Is that the,
Yes.
the female
Yes,
maestra?
I want to make
Maestra?
sure that I'm getting that
I like
correct.
that.
Robin, take it away.
Yes, we have. It's been a long process, especially as I mentioned. We have the growing pains. We definitely have a spreadsheet. It's color coded. There are columns for everything. We also use a third-party publishing tool called Sprinkler, which we use to actually push the posts out.
On that topic, for our audience today, I mean, that's really an enterprise level system.
That's big dogs.
Yeah, I think a tool like Hootsuite
Would be fine.
Or Buffer, right? Hootsuite or Buffer, and those are
would
like-
be more an individual solution. Sorry.
Yes. So we do, and in that calendar, we do it month by month. We do note silly things, fun things like National Watermelon Day, but also like, as everybody knows, Tuesdays are the days that new books come out. So like every Tuesday, we make sure that we slot in a post about a new book. We also often On Twitter, we'll talk about the Audible Daily Deal. We do 2 tweets a day, so we go ahead and slot that stuff in. But we also make sure, like we mentioned before, to leave room for on the cuff or like inspired posts of the day if you think of something valuable to say on that day. So we do have a framework in place where we sort of pencil in certain things and things that we know are going to happen on certain days, but you have to leave your wiggle room in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to, there is no secret to success, but what we've found to be successful is to create sort of a content strategy, a social content strategy, in which you do have some recurring content, right? So if you think of it as a magazine, you know that, the article in this department, right, is always going to happen on this day, and that's what that topic will be around. So I would say it's a mixture of recurring content, right, which is easier because you can fill the bucket. You just have to do that in an interesting way. And then again, leaving opportunities open for real-time marketing, which is where social can really shine if you commit yourself to it.
Where if something pops up, that day or had popped up the day before, you can jump on something as it's appropriate.
Yes, as it's appropriate. And I think that's the key.
Don't just jump on every latest trending hashtag if it's got nothing to do with what you're trying to put out there.
If it's authentic and we're going to talk about brands, but if it aligns with your brand values and there's a justification, it's legitimate that you would be a part of that conversation or you would align with it, that's the sweet spot.
Right.
That's when you can hop on a hashtag or a conversation and it really rings true as opposed to ringing false.
So before we get into, I want to get into.
Did we answer Yara's question though?
You totally did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wish you could see the inside of my head, because the inside of my head is like spreadsheet. What kind of spreadsheet can I create for all of my campaigns? It's great though. It's brilliant.
And
it's
just
brilliant.
to go back on the spreadsheet is that, or whatever kind of planner you want to use, not only is it good for planning for the future, but it's good to be able to look back at what you've done. Because you shouldn't just put stuff out there and then let it live and never look back. You should learn from what you've put out there, and you can track, well, last time I posted from this site, I did it on this platform and it performed this way. I'm not saying you have to do full analytics, but it's helpful to be like, wait, did I post this already? And if you can refer back to however you're keeping track, also super helpful.
I mean, you can geek out as much as you want.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're empowered by data.
I mean, these are our jobs for Pete's sake, so we can get lost in it forever, and we do.
Right.
But you do get out of it how much you put into it.
Right. Yep. So one thing I did want to bring up to you: how does your actor or author or your not personal but personal? How does your website fit into all this? Because it's not a social media account, but it may have a blog. It may be a good place to link out to your other stuff. How do you do that?
Yeah, I have always thought that a website, especially for an actor/writer, it's the best business card. Like it's really, and I feel like we must have them. You have to have them. Mine is, I was thinking about it, and I purposely didn't look at it today because it's pretty up to date. Let's say at least every month or so I get on there and I move things around, and I've created it myself, but I have everything on there. So right now I've got my books on there. I've got a writing page. I have an audiobook page. I have an actress page. And I have, personal stuff, and I do have a blog attached to it as well.
Do you use a specific platform?
I'm using
to create your website?
Yes, it's Wix.
Wix. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say that the most that I get out of it is that I feel like it is a portal by which a lot of fans can contact me, and I have found that to be incredibly valuable. So I always say what I've just done and what I am doing, and I know that people are able to look on there for currently here's where I'm working. You could see me on stage here. You can listen to this audiobook I've just narrated. This is what I'm working on in my writing. And I get a lot of people write to me through it. I mean, I find it so valuable. Truly, fans write to me and say, "I've just listened to this audiobook and it meant the world to me." Blah 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 blah. But I actually don't use it really on. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't use it much on social media platforms. Interestingly, it feels to me something apart from those things. Maybe it shouldn't be. That's
really interesting. I mean, the approach that, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, but my school of thought is that the website should actually act as the online hub of all your activity, and that social platforms provide a vehicle for you to refer people to your site, which is sort of the bigger story. Because social media, let's face it, even if you're using Medium, which is longer articles, they're really bite-sized pieces of information, pieces of nuggets. And really what you want people to do is to lure them to find out what you're really all about, and get more of the information. And I love the fact that blog just came up, because, I mean, blog is considered by some to be the absolute first form of true online social media, because it was comments enabled, and people would go and read stuff, respond. So I think, not everyone has the time sort of, or the wherewithal, or the writing chops, honestly, to do a good blog, but it can be a really important part of the social media mix, I think. So maybe thinking about your website as a hub as the hub of your ecosystem. I hate using that word, but that's the word.
You could say hub of the wheel, and then
yes, hub
each
of the wheel.
social media platform is sort of at the end of a spoke.
You could do that, and I think
I just did.
We will, and thus it was written. But that's sort of how I think about it. Robin, I don't know what your take is on it.
I love that. Thank you. That's an amazing thing to hear.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You can use your blog to aggregate all of your social stuff if you want to have like a feed embedded in the side of your website, and encourage people who Google you and find your website and your blog to then follow you on social. Or you can do it the other way around, where you can say, hey, check out the latest post on my blog, and then tweet the link to it. So it can go both ways.
Right, and what I do have is I have all of the links of all social media on every page of my website, and on every social media, I refer them to my website. So the links are all there. I just don't think I use it as much as I could. I honestly think it's like the website it's lovely. The blog that I sometimes write, once a month maybe, is lovely. I just don't think I'm using it to its fullest capacity. And I like that idea of it as a hub. I never quite thought of it that way, but I think you're right.
Well, because of the way that our business works, of course, as Audible, I mean, right, we're an e-commerce site. So, of course, what we want to do is, when we're not having fun and when we're not just adding value, we do want to refer people back to where sort of the heart of that consumer experience is, which is on our site, of course.
Yep. So I have a question from the audience, and the question is, let's see. It was up there earlier. Okay, yes, Brian P. For a narrator, what are some examples of compelling content to post? And I know that you talked a little bit earlier about sort of the Mark Twain watermelon thing, and as you were talking about that, I was thinking in my head that was a great talking point in terms of okay, so you're a narrator, you're working on books, you're in your studio. We can probably sit here and think, oh my God, there's a million things around you that you could use to talk about in a post. But somebody who's so in it and not quite as comfortable with social media might not recognize all of the opportunities that are right in front of them. One that I always tell our ACX narrators is share a behind-the-scenes video. Even if it's just on your iPhone, 30 seconds of you narrating. Fans, I'm sure you can talk about how much Audible's listeners love behind-the-scenes content.
Yep.
So there's always that. You could give a studio tour, talk about the different kinds of equipment. That's just two things off the top of my head. But how do you determine, and maybe this gets into the idea of branding and knowing what your brand is and who you are, how are you sourcing things? How are you coming up with these things to post?
I think part of it is paying attention to the audience on the platform and what are they talking about. Going back to kitten, cat food, you don't have to always talk about yourself. For example, with the
In fact, you really
shouldn't.
You don't want to go out to dinner with that person, and you don't want to interact with that person in social media.
Yeah. So, for example, on the Mark Twain post, Mark Twain, great storyteller, very on brand for Audible. We didn't say, and now go buy a Mark Twain book. You just put it out there, you have a conversation, it delights your followers, you get a couple likes, and that's great, and that's good for your brand. So for things for narrators to post, we totally want to see the behind-the-scenes stuff, and you don't have to end it with, and pre-order my book at link. They'll know you, they'll get to know you, they'll start to think of you as their friend or their narrator, and that will increase your brand affinity, and that will do the work of selling your stuff for you.
I can't wait to hear what Gabra's going to say, because I think this is probably the most valuable. But I think what we've seen is that we are so close to it that we don't understand how much interesting stuff is happening all the time, right? So to
how do you take that step back?
the next time you're walking in a recording booth, this is old hat to you. I love your hat, by the way, but and that's not an old hat. That's a great hat. But anyway, you probably go in the booth and it becomes routine to you, and you're focused on your craft. But to other people, they're probably fascinated with what that feels like. What did you do the night before to prep? How do you prep your skip? How do you prep your skip? Prep your script.
Yeah.
Red leather, yellow leather. I'm gonna work on enunciation. Actor joke. How did you prepare your script? Do you do a specific set of vocal exercises before you go in? Are there specific, foods? Right, all that stuff is very interesting to people, and not just the what, but the why.
I'm going to say
is very important.
It's very interesting, not to people, but to your fans,
your audience,
Right.
That's
your
a very
audience.
important point. Thank
yes.
you.
So you think about like if you go to a dinner party and you introduce yourself. Well, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm an audiobook narrator, and if someone's like, oh, okay, cool. And then, like, that's not your audience. But if someone's like, really? What is that like to be in a small room? I could never do that. Tell me all about it. Think about the things you tell that person. And, like, think of a person as your audience and a person you are talking to and the kinds of things you would share. So now let Gabra actually answer the question.
Oh, my goodness. No, I love that. This is wonderful. What I'm actually thinking, listening to you both, is I'm thinking I haven't been interesting or clever enough in my posts, and I think I'm generally very authentic online. I think I'm very connected to the writers who I work for as a narrator. So that means that oftentimes I will be connecting with them directly, retweeting their stuff, saying, reposting something and saying this was one of the best projects I've ever worked on. Her book is now on sale. Blah blah blah. So I often do a lot of that kind of. I just love everything that you're saying, because now I'm thinking about, yes, all of the things that I take for granted. There was a wonderful New York Times article that came out a few years ago that was about audiobook narration, for which Audible recommended me to speak to them. And I wound up being part of a video segment at the end, in which it was a bit about me, narrating and blah, blah, blah. And at the very end of the segment, the videographer said, Gabra, tell us what's in your bag. What's in your handbag?
I was just going to say something about what you take, your care bag that you take
And
with
literally
you.
the end of this video, which you can find if you look on, if you look up on the New York Times site about audiobook narration, the very end of this video is me going, entertainer secret, my wellness formula, and
There
it's
you
literally
go.
just me taking everything out of my handbag that I just carry around with me. That's just what's in my purse, that I do think to the average person is fascinating, to the fan, as you said, is fascinating, is something you would never consider. Stuff I tell people all the time is like, do you know that when you, oftentimes if you're having issues in the booth, that a green apple is very good. You want, and green specifically.
So we're only nodding our head because we keep green apples around the studio, and I feel I'm thinking back in my head, we totally need to do a post about this.
Yeah, no, I know, it's so great. Yeah. And do you guys know that in the old voiceover booths that you used to walk in and there used to be salt, because if you were ever dry, right? If you think about that, or actually if there's too much liquid in your mouth, the opposite, dab a little bit of salt on there, and everything kind of. So it used to be that people would sort of go in and like dab a little salt and then do their recordings.
Right.
So
Was
like
a salt
like
lick
that.
in there?
Basically. But stuff like that, it's like, it's fascinating, right?
And to people who are interested, to Robin's point,
Yeah.
that's doubly fascinating.
And I think, Gabra, when we were talking before, you mentioned that you had recently posted a photo of your new at-home studio.
Yes.
And it performed really well, and you were surprised.
Yes, it did, and I was surprised actually because it was me in like my yoga top, in my home studio, being like, "Hey guys, first day in the new booth," type of thing. But it got more response than almost anything. It was a very well loved post across all platforms.
Well, and I think you were, because you were showing who you are,
Being authentic is what I was
right. You weren't necessarily all made up and looking perfect, and people really respect that, because the post was about you in your new recording studio.
Right.
It wasn't just about you, and that's what makes it interesting.
Right. And so it's interesting, what I'm hearing here, I'm almost visualizing from what you've said before, a great post for you, which is take a picture of a really cool, interesting looking salt shaker, have a nice big picture of it, and tell that little quick story of, I remember we used to have salt shakers in the booth, blah, 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 here's why, peek behind the scenes or something like that. So that's, I guess that's a little mini example. I guess what else is coming to my mind is if you want to be able to step out of your routine because it's so routine to you, maybe mark it down for a day. Write down everything you do as whoever you are that you're trying to put on social media.
Fantastic idea.
Mark it all down, everything you do for a day. You probably do a bunch of stuff that you don't even realize that you do. And then I'm almost positive that each one of those things that you do, save for maybe going to the bathroom, but maybe not, depending on what kind of author you are, would be something you could pull out and make a post about or share in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, the geniuses of that technique are really the Onion.
Yeah.
I mean, the Onion takes everyday, really mundane things that we all see and we don't take note of, and just creates a headline out of it.
Yep.
Right? So, I mean, a headline could be, Area Man asks for more mustard on his Red Hot.
Right.
Right?
Which happens every day.
Which
but
happens
it's
every
a
day.
ridiculous headline.
Right? And or actually the way they would do it is unabashedly asks for more mustard on his hot dog, right? And it's those little things that we notice that go overlooked that if you focus on, you find those pieces of specificity that are actually universal. And
That's
that's,
the
where I
thing.
think the magic comes from.
Yeah, because someone sees that and they go, "Oh, that's me. I totally do that." Or,
Right.
"Oh my God, my dad used to do that all the time." Or, "Oh, this is so something my college roommate would do." Let me share it to that person. Let me like it. Let me do whatever. So I think that's a slightly different take on it, but it's like connecting with people and helping them see, like, you're a human being, like I'm a human being.
And mess ups are amazing.
Oh yes,
Right?
Bloopers.
Nobody.
Ugh.
Yes, please, narration.
we have
bloopers,
so many
please.
of those.
Yes.
I have a group of friends where we all send each other the bloopers, but I never
You
actually
should
thought that we
post
should
You gotta
those.
go
Posting the
for it.
100%
You gotta
really
go
smart.
for it.
We have a blooper reel from an Audible Studios book that we posted about a year ago that we still quote to each other at our desks. So I mean, you should totally be sharing that.
Everybody loves bloopers.
Yes.
And
So
nobody
we've been-
believes that as people we don't mess up.
Right. No,
So
it's
if ev-
totally
if-
okay
If
to-
everything
Yeah.
that represents you is totally perfect and nothing's wrong,
That's
the
weird.
BS meter goes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been focusing a lot on a lot of the specifics, a lot of the granular stuff about social media, where you post, when you post, what you post, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to get into branding in a general sense. I know it can be challenging for a company, especially, to figure out who are we as a brand, what's our brand voice, what is that process like. But I'm sure that for an author or a narrator or somebody who is not necessarily surrounded by an entire business to support them, what is branding? How do you decide who you are as a brand? How do you decide what your brand voice is and what your tenets are?
I think the good news about being an individual is that you don't have to gain any kind of consensus, right?
Right.
That you can make those decisions. On the other hand, it is hard to make those decisions because you can't be everything at once, nor should you try to be, right? Try to please everybody, you please nobody. I like to talk about brands. Successful brands as having sharp edges. And what I mean by that is they have a very specific point of view. They don't pull any punches. They communicate what they don't like as well as what they like. And they have the confidence to just say, hey, here's what we're about, or here's what I'm about as a brand. If you're not into that, that's totally fine. But it's just, this is who I am.
But so wait, let's back that up a little bit. This
Yes,
is who
let's.
I am. This is what I'm about as a brand. How do you get there? How do you figure that out?
There's a lot of discussion lately all over the internet, particularly on LinkedIn, Gabra, if you're doing stuff on LinkedIn, about personal branding, right? And the same rules. I mean, it's different, but the same general rules apply to a personal brand and a brand of a company, the brand of a product. And a brand, really, forgetting all the complicated stuff, is really about a set of expectations and delivering on those expectations, your ability to deliver on those expectations. So if, as part of your personal brand, let's say, you're always on time, right? You're always very respectful, right? And you always listen more than you speak, right? If that's the promise that you're making and you deliver on that, that's what your brand is about, right? And if that's authentic to you, you can continue to deliver on that.
Right.
And you can meet those expectations. So that's the first part. I think it's expectations and delivery on those. And then the second part is really, I think, about personality. It's the how, right? So it's your personality. How do you say things? How do you present yourself visually, in videos, in terms of even the design of your website? Back in the old school Ogilvy days, the rule was everybody needs to have a thing. Right. Gabra and I had a really interesting conversation right before sort of the cameras went on about her hat. Could you say a little bit about your hat?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I was sort
Totally
of wondering.
serious.
I was like, is this ridiculous? But this very much is me. I'm almost
on
always in
brand.
hats. People always know me by my hats, and so I feel like it's the perfect thing to wear as part of branding, because anything I would brand about me would have a hat in it or on it.
Not a bad idea.
Just would.
I want to pull out from there the sort of the direction about that, right? Because I think branding is not so much for businesses, but for people can kind of be a dirty word. Some people are turned off by, oh, I have to be a brand. I'm just a person. I don't want to be a brand.
Right.
And you said something very interesting in the sense of how you're deriving your brand from who you are naturally. It's not that you picked up a hat one day and you said, you know what, I'm Gabra the Hat Lady. You like hats, you wear hats. It's just kind of a thing that's natural and authentic to you, and it's something you can highlight as a marker. Think about, what does brand mean for a cow, right? Branding.
Right.
So that's marking you in just a little way as Gabra. And I think it's important that it was something that was authentic and was just something you highlighted out of what was already going on with Gabra.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think so. The question sort of was, do I wear this for this? And the answer was,
Absolutely yes.
This is sort of very much who I am.
Yeah.
I do think, I'm loving this because I feel like I'm in a moment of rebranding, especially being someone who's in really 3 different fields. I just got a tremendous amount out of what you just said. I think what I look
once
at
in a while.
Yeah, hey,
My
right?
best.
I think what I look at is, and this has been very interesting for me, and I think for anyone who is a performer who performs in different media, even if you're a television performer and a narrator and a stage performer, in whatever way, we all cobble together a lot of crafts. But I think I have tried repeatedly to pull out what is consistent in all of those media to me, what is consistent to me in all of them. And for me, I know it's humor, I know it's strength, I know it's a powerful voice and so I'm trying to take out what is consistent in all of the things that I do that then becomes, no matter what, that Gabra Zachman is consistent in any media.
The good news is you've done all the hard work already, and you've made the hard choices, right? Because we can't be everything, and you've focused on the things that are really meaningful to you and authentic to you, and that's literally what it's all about. So if you know what if you're self-aware enough to know what your limitations are, to not try to be something that you're not, and to focus on 3 or 4 key things that are really important to you. That's the key. And I'm sorry, Scott, but you talked about the difference between sort of being a person and being a brand. Like, I hate to tell people they're a brand and they just don't know it, right? Because part of being a brand, right, is expectations and also the things that people associate with that brand.
It's your reputation.
That's right. That's right. So there are associations that people are going to make about Reader Cruiser, even if it's like a brand or not. So I would be doing a disservice to myself if I didn't think about that and say, hey, this is happening regardless, and it's not fake. It's being authentic to who I am, and it's saying, let's play to my strengths, right? It's what your mom always said. If people were watching you all the time, how would you act? Right? And it is part of that. It should never be fake or be a lie, but play to your strengths.
So on that topic, can you tell me what are Audible's brand tenets? What's Audible's brand voice? What are we playing to there?
I guess I'll take sort of the core. So, in Branding 101, the practice of branding, there's sort of 3 levels that you want to go through. The first is sort of finding your essence, or what is the essence of your brand at the very core, and it should be a very simple statement. It could be a word like joy, right? Or it could be Lego has a great one, which is something like play for life, something like that. Play and learn for life. Anyway, it's and your reaction to that just tells me that they've got that right? So that's the essence. So everything sort of bubbles up from that. Then there's a set of what is called, values, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Sort of core values. One of Audible's is we bring words to life, right? And it's what we do, and it's something that we really believe in, so that makes sense. And then sort of the outer ring of that are these associations or personality traits that we want to have associated with ourselves. For example, we're open, right? We're bright. We're intelligent. And
we're passionate.
We're passionate as well, right? So all those fit together in a kind of a system. I'm talking too much, Robin, go.
So, and then how that filters down to social media is Reed had mentioned earlier that we just did this whole sort of documentation process for our team. And one of that was like, okay, we have our brand values and our tenets and our principles and our statements, and how do we make that part of our social media. And we say, well, on social media, we're going to use these values in order to connect with our community, in order to delight our fans, in order to enlighten our fans or illuminate issues they may not have known about. And we talk about how we're passionate. So one of our ways that we sort of bring this to life is on our social media accounts, we say we. We don't say Audible has top 10 listens for you. We say, check out these awesome books that we just put out this month. We're so excited about them and we love them. We say we get excited. We use emojis. We use animated GIFs because that's how our brand comes to life on social media.
Right.
I
Naturally,
think,
authentically.
Yeah.
Right.
New York Times, I don't think would tweet a link about like, OMG, totally, you got to check these out, winky face.
'Cause
That's
who
not
they
their
are.
brand.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
BuzzFeed might.
Right.
So
and that's their brand.
Exactly.
Right. So this leads into an audience question from Mike S. The idea of sort of branding and being you or being you as a brand and whether those are different or whatever, making it into really concrete terms. Mike S. is curious, if you have a personal Twitter account, should you just start using it for a book actor info, or should you set up a different account? And this, it doesn't have to be just for Twitter. The general question, can you just use your Gabber Zachman page, or are you better off starting a Gabber Zachman actor page or actor account or something like that?
Man, that is a good one.
It's a
What-
great
what
one. I
have
mean, I'm not the authority here, but why not answer?
You're a practitioner, which
Exactly.
makes
You're
you
in the
which
front
makes you an
lines, you're out
authority.
there doing it every day, so you know what works and doesn't work for you, or you're learning that.
I think I generally tend to think that in terms of the combination of authenticity and really trying to put yourself out there, that you just want to use your own personal stuff as your. At this point, I think for personal accounts, I feel like the line between the business account and the personal account, if it's a person, if it's an actor, I feel like we want those lines to be thin. Meaning, especially on something like Twitter, we want Gabber Zachman to be Gabber Zachman actress, Gabber Zachman narrator, Gabber Zachman author, Gabber Zachman
Cultural
having a nice cup
commentator,
of
right?
cultural commentator, wearing hats, having
Wearing
a nice
hats.
cup of coffee.
Yeah.
For sure.
We want it all to be, I think, the same. Yeah. I do have a second. This is very fun for me, but I do have another Twitter account for my pseudonym, and that's really fun. That I think is like a fun, weird, interesting thing. I think like it's fun to play around with stuff like that, but in terms of like the majority of what I do, it all falls under my name. I do think when it gets to sort of author stuff, a lot of times people will have websites that have author on the end of it, and maybe when you've built a real portfolio and you need a special portal, that makes great sense to me. But I do think in general,
Yeah. So I'll just say, personally, I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and this sort of goes back to what do you post on each. My Facebook account is just my friends and family. I have said to everybody in this room, I'm sorry, I won't be Facebook friends with anybody that I work with because I keep Facebook very personal. However,
Now I get it finally.
yeah, sorry, it wasn't because I don't like
Just
you or anything.
ignoring for the better part of 2 years at
Yes.
this point.
But on Twitter and Instagram, on Twitter especially, I think of myself as being in a public room and talking about myself. And of course, I have a line that says, tweets do not reflect the opinion of my employer on Twitter, because that's sort of very public. And then Instagram is sort of in between, where I have a public account, but I know I could switch it to private at any time. Right. But that I use to, again, sort of, I choose what I share there very carefully. And to answer the question, yes, I think you can use your personal, but it depends on how important it is for you to keep like your work-life balance separate, and how much you view as like, oh, I'm a narrator all the time, or like I'm only a narrator from 9 to 5.
I would even go one step further, which is if you have an existing Twitter account, and again, this is about branding and expectations. If people expect to get from that handle a certain thing that you've been giving them for forever, and then all of a sudden the tenor of it completely switches, that can be really strange, right? So then ask yourself sort of what is the purpose of this platform for me? And if that purpose doesn't align, right, then maybe you do need a different handle, I would say.
And so I'm like I'm picturing a person who, maybe they're kind of snarky in real life, and maybe they make a lot of jokes, and they're sarcastic and acerbic and
Is
whatever.
this hypothetical?
It's a hypothetical.
Okay.
And so the question then is, okay, so you're an actor. What is that the type of books that you act? If you're narrating and acting, if those are the kind of roles that you do, and you've been yourself on your social media account, perhaps it makes sense to just transition that into talking more about your brand and what you're doing. However, if in real life you're snarky and sarcastic and funny, and you just happen to constantly play roles where you're like the super sweet romantic leading man or woman or whatever, that would sound like a mismatch to me, and perhaps you would want to try and keep your snarky personal stuff over here and have your actor account over here.
For sure. The point is to avoid the kind of dissonance that happens when two things just don't make sense together. Peanut butter and jelly, awesome. Peanut butter and something I can't think of that would be disgusting.
Peanut butter and roe,
sushi,
maybe? Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Those don't go together, and people notice that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple more questions to get through, and then we'll get to some examples that we have from both Audible and Gabra's social media accounts. I do want to quickly try and get into. Okay, so you've built your brand, you've established your social media accounts. How do you get people to notice them? Should it just be sort of a slow, organic process? Should you be expecting to make this big splash and then you get 1,000 followers in a day? How once you've started, you're somewhat new. How do you get people to start noticing you and following you and engaging with you more?
I think you have to engage first. You pick your platform that you want to be active on, and you follow people that you like, that are similar to you, whose conversation you find valuable, and you start interacting with them. And then leverage your network, your real life social network, to sort of help you raise up organically and say, oh, check it out. Gabra Zachman's now on Twitter. Let me send a tweet about her and let all my fans know. Don't be afraid to leverage your real world social network in order to help you. I don't think it's the kind of thing where you want to spend $500 in India to get 1,000 new clickbait followers. Not valuable. No, that's not going to help you at all.
People can tell they're fake, and then eventually the accounts just get deactivated, and then you lose them anyway, and you spent money on nothing.
I think the sad truth, and it's not sad, it's just a reality, is that patience. Right? And do good things. And what I mean is make sure your content is good and valuable. People will find it. All it takes is one person to really find it. But, don't try to think it can happen fast, and don't try to do a million different things at once, would be my advice. And Robbins is great about leveraging the people that you know.
So that actually brings me to a question for Gabra. Do you find that your real-world interactions are important for your brand or for expanding your footprint? And does that trickle back to online if you do networking or coaching, if you go to APAC, the Audio Publishers Association conference? How does the real-world stuff get mixed in?
Yeah, I think invariably, I think what we all want is for those things to sort of seamlessly interact with each other. That one feeds the other and the other feeds the other, right? And I guess the overall thing would be, what we all want more visibility, perhaps more connections, more capacity to either get work or to promote our work, right? I think networking is a big term, and I think. I almost feel like one has to throw a really wide net in order to just catch a few fish. And I think you guys would, I'm sure, say the same thing in every, so from the professional to the personal, I think we would say the same thing. I never think there's a lost opportunity with networking, meaning I always think one can benefit from networking more, which means perhaps, yes, in coaching, in connecting. I think everything I have, and I have had 3 very rich artistic careers that flourish in different ways, they all come from personal connection, meaning someone I met somewhere who gave me an entree, meaning someone I connected with at a job who just liked me enough to give me more of those jobs. They have a friend who referred me. They have all come from that. That is the nut of it, I think. Does that answer your question? Did I answer that?
Yeah, I think so.
For performers, it's such a beautiful time to be selling yourself and be promoting yourself because, man, you don't have to hit the pavement. Right, to pound the pavement like you did in the old days. You're not sending out 8x10 glossies with resumes stapled to the back, in manila envelopes to everyone you can think of. It's very easy to market yourself. The distribution costs are lower, and so it's really, there's very little incremental cost to just constantly be networking and just do it the right way and for the 80th time in a way that's authentic to you.
Okay, so I have one more question, and then I'd like to get to the examples that we have. And that's just basically, can you talk to me about the idea of testing and adjusting? Along the lines of how do you build your following, keep putting stuff out there, look at what works. How do you go back and determine what works? Obviously, Audible is a very data-driven company, and so individuals, actors may not be quite as data-obsessed as we are. But just testing and adjusting, putting something out there, going at it, looking back at what worked and what didn't. Just roughly, how can you do that in a way that can propel you forward?
Robin can speak about the specifics of content, but I think it's literally the first step is identifying what the variables are and what you can change, right? And don't change lots of things at once.
Right. So the beauty of social media is you put something out there and you get immediate or not so immediate feedback. It's not like an ad that you put in the classifieds where you're like waiting for the phone to ring and you don't know how many people saw it. You can literally see how many people have seen your post, clicked on your post, liked your post, commented. You get instant feedback, right? So if you have something that you think was really compelling and you wrote a tweet about it and you put a link on it and it didn't get any clicks or retweets. So then you think, okay, well, I posted this at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. What happens if I post this at 11 o'clock on a Thursday?
And by the way,
at
same
night?
thing.
Same exact
thing.
So to Reed's point, only changing one variable. That could have a difference, just the timing of the thing. Or it could be, well, what if I rewrote the headline in the form of a question rather than check out my latest book? Be like, what do you think of my latest book? Like turn it into a question instead. Like changing little things and then maybe like, well, what if I had done this with a photo? And just you can reuse the content because like we said, like social media just will fall off the page after a week and no one will even remember it, which is, so use that and be like, okay, well, no one saw this last week. How can I take another look at it and try this week and see if I can do better?
Great. That's a very good, concise overview.
What Robin said.
What Robin said of testing and adjusting. Yeah. I'd like to get to the examples that we have here. I know we're coming up on close to an hour, but hopefully this is really great, compelling stuff that the audience is learning from. So since we don't have a show on after us, because this isn't TV, I'm okay going a little bit longer than the 60 minutes, if people are okay with that.
Is that in our contracts? Are we good with that?
I think I have you for at least 61 minutes. So
Okay.
we'll take it that far, and then
All right, fair enough.
maybe you'll be nice to me.
Fair enough.
So we're ready to go over to some of the examples that we have here. And the first one, if we're on it, is this is a post from Audible, I believe from Audible's Facebook account. And
I think we did, actually, speaking of cross-posting, we did this on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
Ah, okay. So can you tell me, let's see, I'll give you 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to tell me about this.
Right. So this is a riff on a popular post that we saw another brand put out that we thought, okay, how do we make this about Audible? So the post is the first narrator's name you see will perform your memoir. So what this is, it's reaching out to our followers and getting them to think about themselves. And it's a fun little game where you just glance at the word search and then you might see like, oh, Scott Brick, or oh, Lily Collins, or oh, Gabra Zachman. Name might pop out. And then when people see it, they feel like, oh, that was a magic trick. And then what they want to do is then comment on the post and say, oh, Lily Collins is going to narrate my memoir. And then they might want to share it and say, hey, who did you see? So this post came together really well and got really great engagement. The reason we did post it across all three platforms was that we felt it was a brief enough interaction where you scan it, you comment on it, and then you could like it or share it. And that's something that's common across all three platforms. But now we're struggling with, okay, well, how do we do this again?
Right.
You know, like we can't just say, okay, well, what author will write your... Like we can't do the exact same thing and just...
We can't?
We could test and see how it does.
In truth, we shouldn't, though.
Yeah, so that's sort of the challenge of once you do something really well, how do you do it again?
And one little thing I want to pull out here, just in terms of branding best practices, is I noticed that this is in one of Audible's brand colors, which is Solar.
Brand color, brand font. We have our logo in the corner, not too not like giant
branded.
Audible.
Right.
Yes, exactly. But if you look at our accounts, you will notice a visual consistency because remember, no one is really going to go to Facebook.com/Gabra Zachman. They're going to follow Gabra and then see their own timeline with like their grandma's post and maybe Audible's post and their next door neighbor's post of their kids, whatever. So you need to be recognizable in a field of a lot of other people, but you need to look like yourself or your brand.
I'll tell you a brand that did an absolutely amazing job of this. I don't know if they still do, but man, 3 or 4 years ago, Target, anything that you saw coming from Target on TV, in print, and social.
I think it's still very strong.
Yeah, you would look at it and you would just go, that's Target.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Now,
it had that red
Yeah,
Yep.
now,
We knew
it was very stark,
Yep.
right? White background, just popping colors. Now, again, that's a very high level organizational example of marketing. But the same should be true. That again, it's about setting expectations. So someone should say, "Oh, that's a hat. I bet. Wow, I bet that's I bet that's got something to do with Gabra."
Right.
And
Every post I'm going to post from now until
Right.
eternity,
And
it's all hats
hide a hat
from now
somewhere
on.
in there.
and
It's just all
darn it,
hats.
and darn it if they're not right. But that's just a great example of that kind of consistency. You don't have to be so formulaic and prescriptive about it as we do, because we're a large brand
Right.
and marketing organization. But if there's an element of consistency there, that's a nice little wink. People will pick up on it.
Yep. Even unconsciously, even if they don't realize.
For sure.
they do.
Exactly.
Right. So as we go to our next post here, this is an example, I believe, from Instagram. This carries another one of Audible's brand colors, which is that ultramarine. And I guess Robin again, if you could give me the quick explanation of what we have here.
All right, so this goes back to what we were saying about conversation. What we asked, what's the best book you listened to this month? But in the caption for the post, it's like, we also listened to some great books this month. To see our recommendations, follow the link in our profile. So, we are asking people to go back to our site and look at books and ostensibly then buy some audiobooks. But that's not the main point of the post. The main point
We
is
never
just,
say that.
Exactly. And so the main post is like, just tell us, what have you listened to this month? And then someone will comment in the captions like, oh man, I finally got around to Unbroken and it was amazing. And someone else will reply, oh, I loved Unbroken, it was so great. You should listen to whatever next. And then that's the other good thing is like for a larger brand, to have your people having a conversation with each other and building your community, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah. And from a most basic standpoint on social, Facebook uses an algorithm. Instagram now uses an algorithm. The more people that are more frequently commenting on it, sharing it, liking
Excellent
it,
point.
the more lift it will get, and then therefore the more people it will be served to. Right?
Exactly.
One key to asking questions is making the answer very, very simple.
Yeah,
Yes.
And also don't ask a question that you don't want the answer to.
Yes, agree.
That is a very good strategy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so we say, what's the best book you listened to this month?
Right.
Because if we say what are your top 5 books of all time? People
Too
are
hard
like,
to think
oh
of.
man, well, I don't want to say this or that or whatever. So you ask something simple.
Simple or binary?
Binary, yes.
Yeah.
To the binary point, not necessarily a yes or no question, but just like, do you
This or this.
This or that? Yes,
Yeah.
we
Right.
say,
Right.
do you ever listen to your books at 1.5 speed versus, or do you only ever listen at regular speed? And then people will come in and say, oh, I always do at 0 speed. I would never speed up, and other people will chime in otherwise. Because again, you want that conversation happening.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to skip over and jump to an example from some of Gabra's accounts. And here we have an instance of something that Gabra posted for, remind me the name of the production company?
Yes, it's a Noggin Sauce Pictures.
Noggin
it's
Sauce.
a promotion for a short film called Mrs. Drake, of which myself and partner Rachel Fowler are the stars of it. And I agreed to help out with social media. She and the producer John Dyack are producing it. And I said I love social media and would love to help promote this piece. The amazing
You
film.
rued the day, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I kind of did. I kind of did. When we got to crowdfunding, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I just sort of want to die." But anyways,
Right.
this is a film that it was worth it because the film itself was so joyful, such a great collaboration, amazing people all around.
Right.
Really potent cast, crew, director, DP.
And it looks like
So-
you tried to take advantage of that good feeling on set and those
Yep.
relationships in this post that we have here. And again, I get into the idea of cross-posting. I see that we have the same post on Facebook and Instagram.
Yep.
I know that you saw this as an area of opportunity. You would have hoped that these posts would have maybe spread a little bit farther and gotten a few more impressions. I'm curious about your cross-posting of them, and just if it occurred to you, and we've talked here about expectations within a certain platform and how something on Instagram. So Instagram. A million hashtags can often be much more acceptable than they would be on Facebook. Tagging a ton of people can be more acceptable than it would be on Facebook. Sorry, other way around. But so, I'm just noticing this, and so again, it's interesting, the idea of cross-posting and when that may or may not be the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think looking back on it, I would say that a couple of things that and again, we did very well. We raised the money for the picture, so like the goal was accomplished, but we didn't
Which
get
is the important part.
Yeah.
Right?
The goal was actually accomplished, but we didn't actually get as many followers. Now that's still an ongoing campaign. Followers of the actual campaign on Seed and Spark, which is the crowdfunding platform. I think looking back on it, a couple of things did not go as well as they could have. And the very first one is separating out how to post on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Now I understand a little bit more about how I could have used each to a greater capacity.
So I think the
probably
photo
number one.
you used was strong, and you
Yeah.
could have used the same photo
Yes.
on each platform while amending the caption to be more authentic to that audience.
I think, yes, this makes so much sense to me. I also think, we started out, there's a lot of women involved. It's a female featured piece. It's a female director, Caitlin Fitzgerald, amazing actress, amazing director, female DP. So we started out hashtagging women in film and realized sort of halfway through the campaign that wasn't completely authentic to actually, as great as the film was, that really the film was much more about collaboration. And it focuses on single parenthood, so there's like a whole message there and a whole poignancy to the actual writing of the film. So in a way, I almost feel like the content of what we were using to engage people wasn't actually as strong as it could have been or will be going forward.
That's a great pivot.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get into the last post that we're going to look at, and unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up. I feel like we could talk all day, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the
Well, Robin
audience
can
would
tell you that
would-
I could.
I mean, we do have happy
could all-
hour
all these
right
reasons-
after this.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
all could.
Yeah,
This is a panel
clearly.
of people who could all actually talk all day.
Clearly. But we do have to wrap things up. I do want to get to our last example because it does touch on something that I think is very germane to authors and actors who are on ACX. And so here we have, this is the book that you've written. You can tell me a little bit quickly about the series in just a moment. But the point of this is that you got the book reviewed. And I know that we get questions about this all the time. So you got a good review for the book. And the question became, what do I do with that? How do I leverage that? How do I get that out there? So tell me a little bit about quickly what you did here and what the book is. And then we could perhaps talk about a couple of ideas of what might make that more successful next time.
Okay, I'll give the 30 seconds. So the Bod Squad series, 3 books. It's a romantic spy caper series. It's sexy, it's funny, it's cool, it's great. It's a great beach read, right? What Audible allowed me to do is they produced, but then allowed me to cast all of my colleagues in the industry to play all of the voices. So in the audiobooks, I do the narration, and everyone who I've grown up with, working with, a number of people who everyone's a fan of, are doing all the individual voices. It's the coolest project ever, and Pete Rowan of Rowan Audio engineered the whole thing, which was an undertaking of colossal regard. So this is a special kind of thing. It's not often that you do a full multicast. It's not often that someone who is a well-known audiobook narrator and actress writes this thing. The whole thing is filled with the unusual and filled with opportunities of promotion. It's just gotten this wonderful review on AudioFile. And my question is...
That's awesome.
I know, it is.
Congrats.
It's so cool.
Congratulations.
It's like it made my day. Best thing ever. And my question is, how do I leverage that? That's the big question. I posted, I made a post about it, and I tagged all of the narrators in it, and they also did. I mean, my narrators, who are my dear friends, they also posted and shouted the thing around. But I feel like it felt like a little gem given to me that I didn't quite know how to handle. Right. Yeah.
So I did take a look at this post, and I had some ideas. One of the things was you sort of buried the link in the caption of a photo. So you instead of sharing a link on Facebook, you shared a photo of the book and then put the link in the caption. So on Facebook, the way a post is formatted in a feed, a link post, when you share a link and an image is auto-generated and it looks like a link, people know, oh, that's a thing I click on, and then I go read it, versus a photo, which people will just scroll by. Right?
Amazing.
And I
Got
think
it.
the other thing you did, it was wonderful to tag all the narrators you worked with, but again, you did it in the caption of the photo, where in Facebook, on photo posts, you can tag in the photo. So you don't get that wall of text, but if anyone scrolls over that photo, the names pop up, and anyone who got tagged also gets the notification. So again, it's all of the right pieces were there. They just needed to be a little bit Tetrised around a bit, and I think it could be super successful. And the best thing is, on social media, you could just go home and do that tonight.
No, I am. I'm going to go home and
do
do
it
that
again.
tonight. That's amazing. Thank you. That's brilliant. That's so helpful. That's so simple, and it is just different.
Yeah, and
it's
also,
different.
just to say, so what I just said was actually 2 separate posts. So one is a link post saying, I'm so humbled and so excited by this great review I got. Please check it out. Then a second post is a photo of the book cover tagging all the narrators like, I just got a great review in the magazine, not linking to it, saying, thanks so much to everybody who helped me. And not trying to do everything at once. I mean, social media, you could do a couple different things, a couple different ways, and see what works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's got
exactly.
legs.
Well, the main character of the book is Legs.
There you
The
go.
nickname
Hey,
is
perfect.
Legs.
There you go. I
didn't
That was
even-
so well done. You didn't even know that.
No, I didn't.
That was
but
brilliant.
I think what Robin's really pointing to is make a story of it.
Exactly.
Right? Like don't tell the beginning, middle, and end all at once, and make sure you use your website. right?
Amazing.
Make sure you put that
Yes.
review on your website,
I know I'm going to do it. I'm gonna
and
do
then
all
write
of
a
this
blog
tonight.
post about it.
I'm going to do
Yeah,
all
talk
of
about
this.
what it
it's
tells
just
in the
us.
next few days.
360. Yep.
Exactly.
No, and I think that's great advice. I think that's a great sentiment to close on. Again, I hate that we have to close, but all good things must come to an end. I would like to thank Gabra Zachman,
Thank
Reed
you.
Armbruster, and Robin Fink for coming in. And I would like to thank you for watching, you, the audience. Please do join us next week, this same day, this same time, this same bat channel, for a day in the life inside the booth with Caitlin Kelly. Come on back next week.
That sounds amazing.
It will be.
All right.